His empire crumbled, until a black woman showed him how to rebuild. Charles Hall lost 15 pounds in the 18 months after his empire collapsed. Turns out betrayal kills your appetite. Standing in that Seattle auction house at 37, watching his former life get divided up like table scraps, he thought he knew what rock bottom felt like. But rock bottom was about to become the foundation for something better than he ever imagined. Close your eyes for just a moment. Think about the last time a story made you feel something real. Made your heart race. Made tears fall without permission. Made you remember why being human is so beautifully complicated. That's what we do here at CJ Stories. Whether you're returning or just discovering us, welcome home. This is your safe space for tears, laughter, hope, and everything in between. Today's story will take you somewhere unexpected. It'll make you think. It'll make you feel. And I promise you, you won't see the ending coming. But here's the thing, the magic only works if you stay till the very end. No skipping. No rushing. Just you, me, and a story that might just change how you see the world. If it moves you, let me know you're here, subscribe, like, and share this with someone whose heart needs touching today. Ready? Let's step into today's story. The auction hall smelled like old money and new desperation. Charles Hall stood at the back of the room in downtown Seattle, watching strangers bid on pieces of his former life. The mahogany desk where he had signed his first $1 million deal went for $800. The leather chair from his corner office, the one that used to face floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound, sold for $250. He was 37 years old, and everything he had built over the past decade was being divided up like table scraps. The auctioneer's voice droned on. Lot 43. Lot 44. Each number was another memory being catalogued and sold. Charles kept his hands in the pockets of his jacket, the only suit he had left that still fit properly. He had lost 15 pounds in the 18 months since his tech company collapsed. Turns out betrayal kills your appetite. His business partner, the man he had trusted since college, had been embezzling for 3 years. By the time the forensic accountants finished their investigation, there was nothing left to save. The company folded. The investors sued. The employees found new jobs and stopped returning his calls. His fiancée, who had loved the penthouse and the vacations and the reputation, left before the ink dried on the bankruptcy papers. That was September of 2022, when Charles was 35 and still believed he could fix things. Now it was March of 2024, and he was standing in an auction house watching his past get sold to the highest bidder. The worst part was not the money. He had grown up without it and he could live without it again. The worst part was the silence. His phone used to ring constantly with deals, opportunities, people who needed his expertise. Now it barely made a sound. Seattle's tech community had a long memory and a short tolerance for failure. Charles left before the auction ended. He could not watch them sell the sculpture that used to sit in the lobby, the one he had commissioned from a local artist when the company first turned profitable. Some things hurt too much to witness. Outside, the March rain fell in that persistent Seattle way, not quite heavy enough to soak through clothing but steady enough to make everything gray. He walked down First Avenue with no particular destination in mind. This was his routine now. Walk until his thoughts quieted down. Sometimes that took an hour. Sometimes it took 4. He passed coffee shops full of people typing on laptops, probably building the next big thing. He passed restaurants he used to frequent, places where the staff knew his order and his name. He did not go inside anymore. It was easier to be anonymous. His apartment now was a studio in Fremont, about 800 square feet of functional space that cost a quarter of what his penthouse mortgage used to run. He had a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a coffee maker. Everything else felt unnecessary. His neighbors were students and artists and people who worked regular jobs for regular pay. They did not know who he used to be, and he preferred it that way. Charles stopped at a corner, waiting for the light to change. Across the street was a small business consulting firm, the kind of place he would have never noticed 2 years ago. The sign read Campbell and Associates in simple black letters. Through the window, he could see a reception area with plants that actually looked healthy and art on the walls that seemed chosen with care rather than hired out to some corporate decorator. The light changed. He crossed the street and kept walking. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his younger sister, Melissa. The only person who still checked on him regularly. Lunch this week? My treat. He typed back. Sure. Thursday? Her response came immediately. Perfect. That place on Capitol Hill you like. Noon. The place on Capitol Hill he liked was a sandwich shop that did not care about his tax returns or his credit score. They made good food and left him alone. Melissa understood that about him now, how he needed things to be simple. Charles made it back to his apartment building as the rain picked up. He climbed the 3 flights of stairs, unlocked his door, and stepped into the quiet. The silence used to bother him. Now it felt like the only honest thing in his life. He made coffee and sat at his small table with his laptop. For the past year, he had been doing freelance consulting work. Small projects. Nothing glamorous. He helped local businesses optimize their systems, advised startups on scaling strategies, fixed problems that did not make headlines. The work paid enough to cover rent and food. It kept his mind busy. It was not what he used to do, but it was something. His current project was for a small manufacturing company in Renton. They needed help streamlining their supply chain. It was straightforward work, the kind of thing he could do in his sleep. But the owner was kind and paid on time, and those two qualities mattered more than prestige. Charles worked until his eyes hurt, then closed the laptop and stared out his window. His view now was the building next door, brick and fire escapes and windows into other people's lives. Sometimes he saw families eating dinner together. Sometimes he saw someone else sitting alone, staring at a screen. He wondered if they were content or just going through motions. Sleep did not come easily anymore. He lay in bed, listening to the sounds of the city outside. Cars passing. Someone laughing on the sidewalk below. The hum of the refrigerator. His mind ran through the same tired loops. What he should have seen. What he should have done differently. How he had missed the signs of his partner's theft. His therapist, a practical woman named Dr. Morgan who worked out of a shared office space in Ballard, told him that trauma changes the architecture of trust. That it was normal to replay events, looking for the moment where everything went wrong. She also told him that at some point, he would need to forgive himself for being human. He was not there yet. Thursday came. Charles met Melissa at the sandwich shop exactly at noon. She was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 iced teas. His sister was 33, worked as a teacher, and had the kind of steady life he used to think was boring. Now he envied it. She stood and hugged him. "You look better." "Liar." "I'm serious. You have color in your face. Are you sleeping?" "Sometimes." They sat and ordered. Melissa talked about her students, a field trip that went surprisingly well, a grant she was applying for. Charles listened and asked questions. It felt good to focus on someone else's life for a while. "How is the consulting work?" she asked. "Fine. Steady." "Just fine?" "It pays the bills, Mel. That is more than I had last year." She nodded, sipping her tea. "I know. I just want you to be happy again. I am working on it." The food came. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only exists between people who have known each other their entire lives. Melissa set down her sandwich. "I heard about something that might interest you." Charles raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "A friend of mine, Angela, runs a business consulting firm. Campbell and Associates. She is looking for someone with tech experience to partner on a project. It is a 6-month contract, helping a mid-sized company transition to new systems. Good pay. Legitimate work." He recognized the name. The office he had walked past earlier in the week. The one with the healthy plants and the careful art. "Why would she want to work with me? Everyone in Seattle knows what happened." Melissa shook her head. "Not everyone. And the people who matter know it was not your fault. Angela is one of those people. She is smart, Charles. Really smart. And she does not care about gossip. She cares about results." He considered this. A 6-month contract would mean stability. It would mean working with a team again, something he had avoided since the collapse. The idea made him nervous. "Think about it," Melissa said. "I can introduce you if you want. No pressure. I will think about it. That is all I ask." They finished lunch. Melissa hugged him goodbye and made him promise to text her over the weekend. Charles walked back through Capitol Hill, his mind turning over his sister's offer. Partnership meant trust. Trust meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant risk. He was not sure he had it in him anymore. But when he got home, he found himself looking up Campbell and Associates online. The website was clean and professional. The services listed were exactly the kind of work he used to do, back when his opinion mattered in boardrooms. There were testimonials from clients, photographs of the team at company events. And there was Angela Campbell. Her bio was brief. Founder and CEO. MBA from University of Washington. 15 years of experience in business strategy and organizational development. Specializes in helping companies navigate growth and transition. Her photograph showed a woman with dark skin and natural hair pulled back from her face, wearing a blue blazer and a calm expression. She looked competent. She looked kind. She looked like someone who did not suffer fools but also did not waste time on judgment. Charles closed the laptop. He would think about it. That was all he could promise himself right now. Friday morning, he walked a different route. He told himself it was for variety, but he knew he was lying. He ended up on the same street as Campbell and Associates, standing across from the office at 7:30 in the morning. The lights were already on inside. Through the window, he saw movement. Someone making coffee in the small break area visible from the street. He could not see who it was. Charles was about to leave when the door to the office opened. A woman stepped out, holding a bag of trash. She was tall, wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair in a high ponytail. She walked to the dumpster at the side of the building, tossed the bag, and turned back. That was when she saw him. For a second, they just looked at each other across the street. Then she smiled, not the polite stranger smile, but something warmer. Something that said she knew exactly why he was standing there. She walked toward him, crossing the empty street with easy confidence. "Morning." "Morning," Charles replied. "You have been walking past my office a lot this week." He blinked. "You noticed?" "I notice most things." "Angela Campbell." She extended her hand. He shook it. "Charles Hall." "I know. Your sister told me you might be interested in a conversation." "Of course she did." Angela's smile widened. "Melissa is persuasive. Also, she cares about you. Those two things make for effective advocacy." Charles did not know what to say to that. "Have you had breakfast?" Angela asked. "Not yet. Neither have I. There is a place 2 blocks from here. Good coffee, better pancakes. Want to join me?" He should say no. He should make an excuse and walk away. He should protect himself from the possibility of more disappointment. Instead, he said, "Sure." They walked side by side through the quiet morning streets. Angela did not fill the silence with small talk, and Charles appreciated that. She seemed comfortable just walking, letting the city wake up around them. The restaurant was small, the kind of neighborhood spot where regulars got greeted by name. Angela waved at the owner, an older man who smiled and pointed them toward a booth by the window. They ordered coffee. Angela got pancakes. Charles got eggs and toast. "So," Angela said, leaning back in the booth. "Tell me what you were looking for." "Honestly? I do not know." "Fair answer. Let me tell you what I am looking for, then. I have a client, a software development company, going through a major transition. New leadership, new direction, growing pains. They need someone who understands tech infrastructure and can help them scale without losing their culture. It is a 6-month project, maybe longer if it goes well. I need a partner who knows the industry and does not mind getting their hands dirty. Why me? There are 100 consultants in Seattle with better reputations right now." Angela sipped her coffee. Reputations are interesting things. They tell you who someone was at a specific moment in time. They do not tell you who someone is now or who they could be with the right opportunity. You did your research. I always do. The food arrived. They ate for a while without talking. Charles found himself relaxing slightly. Angela had a way of being present without being invasive. She did not push. She did not pry. She just was. "Can I ask you something?" Charles said finally. "Of course. Why do you want to take a chance on me? You do not know me. You do not owe me anything." Angela set down her fork and looked at him directly. "In 2019, when I was 30, I lost my biggest client because I refused to lie in a report. They wanted me to say their diversity numbers were better than they were. I said no. They fired me and told everyone in their network I was difficult to work with. For 6 months, I could not get a meeting. People I thought were friends stopped calling. What did you do?" "I started over. Built my firm from the ground up with the clients who believed in honesty more than optics. It took 3 years to get stable. And now I have something real. Something mine." She picked up her coffee. "I take chances on people who have been knocked down because they are the ones who understand what it takes to get back up. And from everything your sister told me, and everything I have seen in your work history, you are someone worth taking a chance on." Charles felt something shift in his chest. Not hope exactly. But maybe the space where hope used to live. "When would you need an answer?" he asked. "Take the weekend. Think about it. If you are interested, come by the office Monday morning. If not, no hard feelings." They finished breakfast. Angela paid, waving off his attempt to split the check. Outside, the city was fully awake now, people rushing to work and appointments and lives that required their presence. "Thank you," Charles said. "For breakfast and for the offer. You are welcome. For what it is worth, I think you would be good at this. I think you miss the work. And I think working with people who trust you might help you trust yourself again." She said it so simply, like it was just an observation rather than something that cut straight to the center of him. "See you Monday?" she asked. "Maybe. I will take maybe." Angela smiled and walked back toward her office, her ponytail swinging with each step. Charles stood on the sidewalk, watching her go. For the first time in 18 months, he felt something other than resignation. He felt curious. He felt like maybe there was a version of his life that did not involve just surviving. He went home and spent the weekend thinking. By Sunday night, he knew his answer. Monday morning, at 8 o'clock, Charles walked into Campbell and Associates. Angela was at the front desk, working on her laptop. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Charles." "Good morning." He took a breath. "I would like to hear more about the project." She stood and extended her hand again. "Welcome to the team." This time, when he shook her hand, it felt like the beginning of something he did not have a name for yet. But whatever it was, he wanted to find out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. The first week working with Angela felt like learning to use muscles Charles had forgotten he had. She gave him an office, a small room with a window that faced the street and a desk that did not wobble. It was not much, but it was his space. A place where his opinion mattered again. The client was a software company called Kinetic Solutions, based in Bellevue. 50 employees, decent revenue, but struggling with growing pains. Their founder had stepped down 6 months earlier, and the new CEO was trying to modernize systems that had been held together with duct tape and hope for too long. It was exactly the kind of challenge Charles used to thrive on. By mid-March of 2024, 2 weeks after he had started, Charles and Angela had settled into a rhythm. They met every morning at 8 to review priorities. She brought insights about organizational culture and leadership dynamics. He brought technical expertise and an understanding of how software companies actually function behind the glossy presentations. Angela ran meetings differently than anyone he had worked with before. She listened more than she talked. When someone presented an idea, she asked questions that made them think deeper rather than just agreeing or disagreeing. She had a way of making people feel heard without letting them off the hook for sloppy thinking. Charles watched her facilitate a meeting with Kinetic's leadership team on a Thursday morning. The VP of Engineering was explaining why they could not possibly migrate to a new project management system. Too complicated. Too expensive. Too disruptive. Angela nodded thoughtfully. Those are real concerns. What would need to be true for it to be possible? The VP blinked. I do not understand. If we removed the obstacles you just named, what would the path forward look like? The room went quiet. Then the VP started talking, actually problem-solving instead of just defending the status quo. Within 20 minutes, they had outlined a realistic migration plan. After the meeting, as they walked back to the car, Charles shook his head. How did you do that? Do what? Get him to argue for the solution instead of against it. Angela smiled. People usually know what needs to happen. They just need permission to think past their fears. He thought about that the rest of the day. They started having lunch together, not every day but often enough that it became something Charles looked forward to. Angela knew all the good spots in Seattle, the places that did not show up on tourist lists. A Thai restaurant in the International District where the owner's mother cooked in the back. A sandwich shop in Georgetown run by a former aerospace engineer who decided he liked food better than missiles. One afternoon in late March, they sat in a small Ethiopian place in the Central District. Angela ordered for them both, pointing to items on the menu and explaining what each one was. Charles realized he had lived in Seattle for 15 years and never actually explored it. He had gone to the expensive restaurants, the places where deals got made and reputations got built. He had never learned the city itself. My mom would love this place, Angela said, tearing off a piece of injera and using it to scoop up lentils. She is always trying to get me to expand my palate. Your mom lives in Seattle? Tacoma. About 40 minutes south. She is a nurse at St. Joseph's. 42 years and counting. She keeps saying she will retire, but I do not think she means it. You close with her? Angela nodded. Very. She raised me and my younger brother on her own after my dad passed when I was 12. She worked double shifts, made sure we had what we needed, never complained. She is the reason I learned how to build something from nothing. Charles heard the love in her voice, the respect. It made him think of his own parents, still married and living in Portland. His father was a high school history teacher. His mother worked as a librarian. They had driven up to Seattle when everything collapsed, sat with him in his empty penthouse, and did not say I told you so even though they probably wanted to. What about you? Angela asked. Family? Parents in Portland. Sister here in Seattle, you know Melissa. That is about it. The two of you seem close. We are now. Growing up, I was too busy trying to be successful to pay much attention to her. Took losing everything to realize she was the only one who showed up when things got bad. Angela met his eyes. The people who stay through the hard parts are the real ones. Yeah. I am learning that. They talked about other things. Books they had read recently. The fact that Seattle had not seen sun in 18 days straight and was starting to feel like a city trapped under a gray dome. Angela admitted she was terrible at keeping plants alive despite having 8 of them in her office. Charles admitted he had not been to a movie theater in 2 years. The conversation felt easy, natural, like they had known each other longer than a few weeks. By early April, Charles realized he was thinking about Angela when he was not with her. Small things would remind him of their conversations. He would see something funny and want to tell her about it. He started noticing details he had not paid attention to before. The way she tilted her head slightly when she was really listening. How she always wore simple jewelry, usually just small gold earrings. The fact that she drank her coffee black in the morning but with cream in the afternoon. He told himself it was just professional respect. Admiration for a colleague. Nothing more complicated than that. Then came the day they worked late on a presentation for Kinetics board. It was April 5th, a Friday evening, and the office was quiet. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. Charles and Angela sat across from each other at the conference table, laptops open, refining slides and rehearsing talking points. Around 8, Angela stretched and rolled her shoulders. I need a break. Want to walk? They left the office and wandered through downtown Seattle. The evening was cool but dry, a rare gift in April. The city lights reflected off puddles from earlier rain. Pike Place Market was closed for the night, but the streets around it still hummed with people heading to dinner or bars or wherever Friday nights took them. Can I ask you something? Charles said as they walked past a bookstore with displays in the windows. Sure. Why did you really give me a chance? I know what you said at breakfast, about understanding what it is like to start over. But there had to be safer choices. People with less baggage. Angela was quiet for a moment, hands in her jacket pockets. Honestly? Honestly. I read about what happened to your company. Not just the headlines, the actual case details. I saw how you cooperated with investigators even when it hurt you. How you used your own money to cover employee severance when you did not have to. How you refused to throw your former partner under the bus in public even though everyone would have understood if you had. She stopped walking and turned to face him. That told me more about your character than any resume ever could. You acted with integrity when you had every reason not to. That is rare. And that is worth investing in. Charles felt something in his chest tighten. He had spent so long thinking of himself as a failure that he had forgotten there were other ways to measure a person. Thank you, he said quietly. They started walking again, slower this time. The conversation drifted to lighter topics. Childhood memories. Favorite seasons. The merits of breakfast food at any time of day. You hungry? Angela asked. Always. She led him to a small diner tucked between 2 buildings, the kind of place that looked like it had been there since the 1950s and refused to change out of principle. They slid into a booth with cracked vinyl seats and ordered waffles and bacon and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since morning. This place does not look like much, Angela said, pouring syrup over her waffle. But the food is honest. No pretense. I like that. I thought you might. They ate and talked until after 10. The waitress refilled their coffee cups without asking. An older couple in the next booth celebrated an anniversary, the man presenting his wife with a small cake he had brought from home. The diner felt like a pocket outside of regular time, a place where the rest of the world could not quite reach them. When they finally left, Charles walked Angela to her car. She drove a practical sedan, a few years old but well maintained. Everything about Angela seemed like that. Thoughtful. Intentional. No wasted effort. I had a good time tonight, she said, unlocking her door but not getting in yet. Me too. We should do this again. The working late part was productive, but the waffles were definitely the highlight. Charles smiled. Agreed. Angela looked at him for a moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she stepped forward and hugged him. It was brief, just a few seconds, but it surprised him. She smelled like cocoa butter and something else he could not name, something warm. See you Monday, she said, pulling back. See you Monday. He watched her drive away, then walked to his own car in a daze. His heart was doing something strange in his chest, beating just slightly faster than normal. He recognized the feeling even though it had been years. He was developing feelings for her. Real feelings. The realization terrified him. The next week, Charles tried to keep things professional. Friendly but bounded. He needed this job. He needed the stability. Getting involved with Angela, no matter how much he was starting to care about her, felt like a risk he could not afford. But she made it difficult. Not because she was flirting or pushing boundaries. Just because she was herself. Thoughtful and funny and present. She brought him coffee the way he liked it without asking. She laughed at his jokes, the real laugh that reached her eyes. She asked his opinion and actually listened to his answers. On a Wednesday afternoon in mid-April, they presented to Kinetics board. The presentation went well. The board approved the recommendations and the budget. As they left the building, Angela turned to Charles with a smile that could have powered the city. "We did it. You did it. That was all your strategy." She shook her head. "We are a team. I could not have done this without you." Standing in the parking lot, watching her celebrate, Charles realized he was in trouble. This was not just attraction. This was not just gratitude for someone who had given him a second chance. This was something deeper. Something that felt like it could matter. They went to dinner that night to celebrate, a nicer restaurant than their usual spots. Angela wore a dress, deep green with simple lines, and Charles had worn the one good shirt he still owned from his previous life. They ordered wine and appetizers and entrees that came beautifully plated. "To new beginnings," Angela said, raising her glass. "To second chances," Charles replied. They clinked glasses and drank. The wine was good. The food was better. But what Charles would remember later was the conversation. How they talked about everything and nothing. How Angela told him about her dream of expanding her firm to other cities. How he admitted that he had been scared to want anything for a long time. "Why?" she asked gently. "Because wanting things means caring about outcomes. And caring about outcomes means you can be disappointed. What if it also means you can be happy?" He had not thought of it that way. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront. The Puget Sound stretched out dark and vast, ferries moving across it like slow stars. The air smelled like salt and seaweed. A street musician played guitar somewhere nearby, the music drifting over the sound of small waves against the pier. "Charles," Angela said, stopping to lean against the railing and look out at the water. "Yeah? I am glad you came to work with me. I know it was not an easy decision. But I am really glad you did." "I am too." She turned to look at him. The lights from the pier caught in her eyes. He could see the water reflected there, and something else. Something that made his breath catch. He should step back. He should change the subject. He should do anything except what he did next. Charles reached out and gently touched her hand where it rested on the railing. She did not pull away. Instead, her fingers curled slightly, just enough to acknowledge the contact. They stood like that for a long moment, not quite holding hands but not quite not holding hands either. The moment stretched and filled with possibility. Then Angela's phone rang. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and sighed. "It is my brother. I should take this." "Of course." She answered and walked a few steps away. Charles could hear her side of the conversation, something about their mom and a doctor's appointment and whether Angela could drive down to Tacoma this weekend. Her voice shifted into caretaker mode, reassuring and competent. When she hung up and came back, the moment had passed. The space between them had returned to something safer. "Everything okay?" Charles asked. "Yeah. My mom has a follow-up appointment and my brother has to work. I will drive down Saturday." "You are a good daughter." "I try." They walked back to the parking garage in comfortable silence. At her car, Angela turned to him again. "Thank you for tonight. For celebrating with me. Anytime." She smiled, then got in her car and drove away. Charles sat in his own car for a long time afterward, his hand still warm from where it had touched hers. He was falling for her. There was no point denying it anymore. The question was what he was going to do about it. The rest of April passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Coffee breaks that lasted longer than necessary. Meetings where they sat closer than required. Conversations that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with learning who the other person really was. Charles learned that Angela sang in her car when she thought no one was listening. That she had wanted to be a teacher like his sister but decided she liked solving business problems more. That her favorite time of day was early morning before the world got loud. That she had been single for 2 years after a relationship ended badly, and she was cautious about letting people in. Angela learned that Charles played piano, or used to before he sold it along with everything else. That he still had dreams sometimes about the company collapse, waking up convinced he had missed something important. That he was afraid of trusting his own judgment. That he thought about her more than he should and did not know what to do about it. They did not talk about the almost moment on the waterfront. But it hung between them, a question neither was quite ready to ask. On the last Friday of April, they finished a major milestone for Kinetic. The new systems were in place. The staff training was complete. The company was running smoother than it had in years. Angela scheduled a team lunch to celebrate, bringing everyone from the office together at a restaurant with a view of Lake Union. Charles sat next to her, listening to the team laugh and share stories. He watched Angela in her element, making sure everyone felt included, celebrating individual contributions, building the kind of culture where people wanted to do their best work. This is what leadership looks like, he thought. Not the flashy conferences or the magazine profiles. Just this. Making people feel valued. Creating something sustainable. Building trust one interaction at a time. After lunch, back at the office, Angela stopped by his door. You have a minute? Sure. She came in and closed the door behind her, which was unusual. Charles felt his heart rate pick up. I wanted to thank you, she said, for everything you have brought to this project. You have exceeded every expectation. You are welcome. It has been good for me too. Really good. I can tell. You are different than you were 6 weeks ago. Different how? More present. More confident. More like who I think you actually are underneath all that self-doubt. Charles did not know what to say to that. Angela took a breath. I also wanted to say that I value our professional relationship. It is important to me. And I do not want to do anything that would jeopardize it. Okay. But I also need you to know that I enjoy spending time with you. More than I probably should. And if you feel the same way, I would like to explore that. Outside of work. As two people who are interested in each other. She said it clearly and directly, no games or ambiguity. It was so perfectly Angela that Charles almost smiled. I do feel the same way, he said. I have been trying not to. But I do. Why were you trying not to? Because I am not sure I am ready. I am not sure I have anything to offer right now except a history of bad decisions and a studio apartment in Fremont. Angela stepped closer. Can I tell you what I see? Please. I see someone who got knocked down and chose to get back up. Someone who does excellent work and treats people with respect. Someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to think differently. Someone I want to spend more time with, if he is willing. Charles felt the last of his resistance crumble. I am willing. Good. She smiled. There is a concert tomorrow night at the Paramount. Jazz Ensemble. I have 2 tickets. Would you like to go with me? As a date, not a work thing. I would like that very much. Pick you up at 7? I will be ready. She left his office, and Charles sat in his chair feeling like the world had shifted on its axis. He was going on a date with Angela Campbell. A real date. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he was looking forward to something. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. The concert at the Paramount Theater was everything Charles had not realized he needed. The jazz ensemble played with precision and soul, filling the historic venue with music that seemed to wrap around the audience like a conversation. Angela sat beside him, her shoulder occasionally brushing his, and every point of contact felt significant. Afterward, they walked through downtown Seattle, talking about the music and how live performance created something recordings never could. Charles felt lighter than he had in years, like he was remembering how to be a person who existed for reasons beyond survival. That Saturday night, the 1st of May in 2024, became the marker for when things shifted between them. They started calling it a relationship, though neither used that word out loud yet. They went to dinner twice more that week. They texted throughout the day, messages that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with wanting to share small moments. On a Tuesday evening in mid-May, Angela invited Charles to her apartment for the first time. She lived in Wallingford, in a 2-bedroom unit filled with warm colors and books and photographs of people who clearly mattered to her. There were plants everywhere, despite her claims of being terrible with them. Most were thriving. I thought you said you could not keep plants alive, Charles said, looking at a particularly healthy fiddle leaf fig in the corner. Angela laughed from the kitchen where she was opening a bottle of wine. Elite. I am actually pretty good with them. I just say I am not so people do not expect me to have it all together. Why would that be a problem? She came back with 2 glasses. Because when people think you have everything figured out, they forget you are human. They forget you might need help sometimes too. Charles took the glass she offered. Do you? Need help? Sometimes. But I am learning to ask for it. They sat on her couch, talking until nearly midnight. Angela told him about building her business from nothing, the lean years when she was not sure she would make it. Charles told her about the weeks after his company collapsed, when he could barely get out of bed. They shared the difficult parts, the vulnerabilities they usually kept hidden. When Charles finally left that night, Angela walked him to the door. She stood close, looking up at him with an expression he was learning to recognize. Permission and question all at once. He kissed her. Soft and careful, giving her every opportunity to pull back. She did not. Instead, she leaned into him, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. The kiss deepened, becoming something that communicated what words had not yet covered. When they finally separated, Angela smiled. I have been wondering when you were going to do that. I have been wondering if I should. I am glad you did. Charles drove home feeling like he was floating 6 inches above the ground. He was 37 years old and falling in love with a woman who made him want to be braver than he thought he could be. The next few weeks unfolded with the kind of happiness Charles had convinced himself he did not deserve. Work was going well. The Kinetic project was ahead of schedule. Angela's firm was getting inquiries from new clients, referrals from satisfied customers who appreciated the quality of their work. And there was Angela herself. They fell into patterns. Coffee on Sunday mornings at the cafe near her apartment. Cooking dinner together on Wednesday nights. Long conversations about everything from philosophy to terrible movies they secretly enjoyed. Charles met her younger brother, Marcus, a firefighter with an easy smile and a protective streak when it came to his sister. Angela met Melissa again, this time as Charles's girlfriend rather than just his advocate. By early June, Charles realized he was happier than he had been in years. Maybe happier than he had ever been, because this happiness was built on something real rather than external markers of success. That should have been his first warning that something was about to shift. The phone call came on a Thursday afternoon in mid-June. Charles was at the office, reviewing reports, when his phone rang with a number he did not recognize. He almost sent it to voicemail, but something made him answer. Charles Hall? Yes. This is David Brighton. I am not sure if you remember me. Charles remembered. David Brighton had been one of his major investors, someone who lost significant money when the company collapsed. Someone who had every right to be angry. I remember. What can I do for you, David? I heard you are doing consulting work now. Working with Angela Campbell's firm. Word travels fast. It does in this city. David paused. I am calling because I have a proposition for you. I am putting together a new venture. Tech infrastructure for sustainable energy companies. I need someone who understands system architecture and can move fast. I want you to come on board as Chief Technology Officer. Charles felt his throat go dry. That is generous, but I am not sure I am the right person. You are exactly the right person. What happened before was not your fault, Charles. Everyone who matters knows that. You got screwed by someone you trusted. But your technical skills are still among the best I have seen. I need those skills. I appreciate the offer, but I am committed to my current project. The current project ends in 2 months, does it not? This would start in August. Competitive salary, equity stake, a chance to build something significant again. Think about it. After David hung up, Charles sat staring at his phone. A CTO position. Equity. A return to the kind of work he used to do. It should have felt like vindication, like proof that he had not been permanently broken by what happened. Instead, it felt complicated. He did not mention the call to Angela that night when they met for dinner. He told himself it was because he needed time to think, but really he knew it was because he was afraid of what she might say. Or worse, what she might not say. The next day, another call came. This one from a former colleague who had started his own firm. We heard you are available. Want to talk about partnership opportunities? Then another. And another. Somehow, word had gotten out that Charles Hall was working again, producing results, and the Seattle tech community had decided his exile was over. By the following Tuesday, he had 3 serious offers on the table. Each one represented a return to his old life. Status. Influence. The kind of salary that would let him stop worrying about rent. He should have been thrilled. Instead, he felt anxious. Angela noticed, of course. Over dinner at her apartment that Wednesday, she asked him directly. Something is on your mind. Want to talk about it? Charles set down his fork. I have been getting job offers. Several of them. That is wonderful. She smiled, but he could see the question behind it. Yeah. It is unexpected. What kind of offers? He told her about David Brighton's proposal. About the other opportunities. About how suddenly everyone wanted to work with him again after 2 years of silence. Angela listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? I do not know. Part of me thinks I should jump at these opportunities. Get back to the level I was at before. But another part thinks maybe that life was not as good as I thought it was. What does your gut tell you? That I am happy now. Happier than I was when I had all the success and recognition. But I am not sure if that is enough. Angela's expression shifted slightly, something closing off. Enough for what? Enough to build a real future on. Enough to be the kind of partner someone deserves. He saw her withdraw, just a fraction. The warmth in her eyes cooling to something more careful. Charles, I am not asking you to prove anything to me. If you want to take one of these jobs, you should take it. But what about us? What about the work we are doing together? The Kinetic project ends in August. After that, you were always going to figure out your next step. Maybe this is just happening sooner than expected. You make it sound simple. Is it not? No. Because these offers feel like tests. Like the universe is asking if I learned anything from losing everything, or if I am just going to chase the same things that did not make me happy before. Angela stood and started clearing dishes, her movements precise and controlled. Only you can answer that, Charles. I cannot tell you what to want. He heard what she was not saying. That she was protecting herself. That she was preparing for him to choose the offers over what they had built together. The conversation ended awkwardly. Charles left earlier than usual, both of them claiming early meetings the next day. The ease that had defined their relationship felt strained for the first time. Over the next week, the tension grew. Charles was distracted at work, his mind cycling through scenarios and possibilities. Angela was professional but distant, giving him space he had not asked for and did not want. They still saw each other, but something had shifted. The conversations were shorter. The silences less comfortable. Charles could feel her pulling back, and he did not know how to stop it without making a decision he was not ready to make. On a Friday afternoon in late June, Angela asked him to stay after everyone else had left the office. They sat in the conference room, the space between them feeling wider than the actual distance. "I think we need to talk," she said. "Okay. These job offers, they are important. They represent validation and opportunity. You should take one of them. What if I do not want to? Then you need to figure out why. Because right now, it feels like you are stuck between two versions of yourself, and I do not know which one you actually want to be." Charles felt frustration rise in his chest. Why does it have to be one or the other? Why cannot I want both the career and the relationship? You can. But you have to actually choose it, Charles. Not just default into it because you are scared of making the wrong choice. I am not scared. Yes, you are. You are terrified. Of failing again. Of trusting yourself. Of letting yourself want something and having it fall apart. Her words hit harder because they were true. He was scared. Scared that if he took one of the high-powered jobs, he would lose himself again. Scared that if he did not take them, he would always wonder what he had given up. Scared that no matter what he chose, it would be wrong. "I do not know what you want from me," he said quietly. "I want you to know what you want. And right now, you do not." Angela stood, gathering her things. "I think we should take some space. Finish the kinetic project professionally, but maybe not see each other outside of work until you figure this out. You are breaking up with me? I am giving us both room to breathe. You need to make this decision without feeling pressured by our relationship. And I need to protect myself from getting more invested in someone who might not be ready for what I want." "What do you want?" "A partner who chooses me without hesitation. Someone who knows what they want and is willing to build it together. I have worked too hard to settle for someone who is still trying to decide if I am enough." "You are enough. More than enough. Then prove it. Figure out what you actually want, not what you think you should want. And when you know, we can talk." She left the conference room. Charles sat alone in the dimming light, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under him. The next 2 weeks were miserable. Charles went through the motions at work, completing tasks and meeting deadlines, but his heart was not in it. He saw Angela every day, but only in professional contexts. She was polite and competent and completely closed off. He stopped returning calls from the companies making offers. He could not think about career decisions when he felt like he was losing the best thing that had happened to him in years. His sister Melissa met him for coffee on a Wednesday morning in early July. She took one look at him and shook her head. "You look terrible." "Thanks." What happened with Angela? He told her everything. The job offers. The conversations. The way Angela had asked for space and he had not fought for her because he was too confused to know what to fight for. Melissa listened, then leaned back in her chair. "Do you love her?" "Yes." "Do you want the kind of life you had before? The 80-hour weeks, the constant pressure, the measuring yourself against everyone else's definition of success?" "No. I hated that life. I was good at it, but I hated it." "Then why are you even considering these offers?" "Because I do not know if being happy is enough. What if Angela deserves someone more successful? Someone who can give her more?" Melissa reached across the table and took his hand. "Charles, listen to me. You are doing that thing again where you measure your worth by external achievements. Angela does not want your money or your status. She wants you. But she needs you to want yourself too. I do not know how." "Yes, you do. You have been doing it for the past 3 months. You just need to trust it." Charles went home and sat in his small apartment. He looked around at the space that had felt like failure when he first moved in. Now it just looked like a place where he had learned to be honest with himself. He thought about the job offers. The prestige. The money. The return to a world that had rejected him when he needed it most and only wanted him back now that he had proven he could still produce results. Then he thought about Angela. The way she laughed. The way she listened. The way she had seen value in him when no one else did. The life they could build together, based on shared values rather than shared ambitions. The choice was not actually complicated. It had never been complicated. He had just been too scared to admit what he already knew. Charles picked up his phone and started making calls. He declined David Brighton's offer. He declined the other positions. He thanked everyone for their interest and told them he was committed to a different path. Then he called Angela. It went to voicemail. He did not leave a message. Some things needed to be said in person. The next morning, he went to the office early. Angela's car was already in the parking lot. He found her at her desk, working on a proposal for a new client. She looked up when he appeared in her doorway. Morning. Morning. Do you have a few minutes? She hesitated, then nodded. He closed the door behind him and sat across from her. I declined all the job offers, he said. Angela's expression did not change. Why? Because they were not what I want. I thought I needed to get back to where I was before to prove I had value. But I was wrong. I do not want that life. I want this one. This one. Working with you. Building something that matters. Being with someone who makes me better. I want you, Angela. Without hesitation. Without doubt. I am sorry it took me so long to say it clearly. She was quiet for a long moment. Charles felt his heart pounding, waiting. What do you want your future to look like? She finally asked. I want to keep doing consulting work. Maybe build something with your firm, if you are open to it. I want to help companies without losing myself in the process. I want a life that has room for things besides work. And I want to build that life with you. Angela's carefully controlled expression cracked slightly. You are sure? I have never been more sure of anything. She stood and walked around the desk. Charles stood too. They looked at each other across 3 feet of office air. I missed you, she said softly. I missed you too. I am sorry I made you doubt how much you mean to me. She stepped into his arms, and he held her like he should have weeks ago. Like he should have the moment she asked for space. Like someone who knew exactly what he was choosing and why. I love you, Charles said into her hair. I love you too. They stood there in her office, holding each other, while the morning sun came through the windows and the city woke up outside. Everything that had felt complicated suddenly felt simple. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. The reconciliation should have been the end of the story. Charles and Angela back together, stronger for having worked through their first real conflict. But life rarely follows the clean narrative arcs people hope for. 3 days after they reunited, on a Thursday morning in mid-July of 2024, Angela got a call from her brother Marcus. Their mother had collapsed at work. She was at St. Joseph's Hospital in Tacoma, the same hospital where she had worked for 42 years. The doctors were running tests. Angela left the office immediately. Charles offered to drive her, but she shook her head. I need to do this alone. I will call you when I know more. He watched her leave, wanting to help but respecting her need for space. This was different than the distance she had put between them before. This was about her family, her history, the parts of her life that existed before him. She called that evening. Her mother had suffered a stroke. Moderate severity. She was stable but would need significant rehabilitation. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but the next few weeks would be critical. I am staying in Tacoma for a while, Angela said. Her voice sounded tired in a way Charles had never heard before. Marcus and I are taking shifts at the hospital. I will work remotely as much as I can, but I need to be here. Of course. Whatever you need. Can you handle the kinetic wrap-up meetings next week? I trust you to represent the firm. I will take care of it. Thank you, Charles. After she hung up, Charles sat in his apartment feeling helpless. He wanted to fix this for her, to take away the worry and fear. But there was no fixing it. There was only showing up and being steady while she dealt with something that had nothing to do with him. The next week, he managed both his responsibilities and hers. He ran meetings, interfaced with clients, kept projects on track. He texted Angela updates but did not push for conversation. She responded with brief thank yous and occasional updates about her mother's progress. Small improvements. Learning to speak again. Right side still weak. By the end of July, Angela's mother was moved to a rehabilitation facility. The prognosis was better than initially feared, but the recovery would take months. Angela came back to Seattle to handle urgent business matters, but Charles could see the toll it was taking. She looked exhausted. The energy and warmth that usually radiated from her had dimmed to something more brittle. They had dinner at her apartment on a Wednesday night. Angela had picked up takeout on the way home, too tired to cook. They ate Thai food straight from the containers, sitting on her couch in comfortable clothes. How is she really doing? Charles asked. Better. The therapists say she is responding well. But it is hard to see her struggle with things that used to be automatic. Speaking. Walking. Holding a fork. That must be scary for all of you. Angela nodded. My mom has always been the strong one. The one who held everything together. Seeing her vulnerable like this, it changes something. What can I do to help? You are doing it. being patient with me, taking care of work, not making me feel guilty for being distracted. You are allowed to be distracted. This is your mother. She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being together in the quiet. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a new rhythm. Angela split her time between Seattle and Tacoma. Charles held down the office and met her whenever she was in the city. Their time together was precious and limited, stolen hours between hospital visits and work obligations. Charles met Angela's mother for the first time in mid-August. Her name was Diane Campbell, and even recovering from a stroke, her presence was formidable. She was 63 years old, with silver hair and eyes that assessed Charles in about 30 seconds. "So you are the one my daughter talks about," Diane said. Her speech was slower than it had been before the stroke, but clear. "Yes, ma'am." Charles Hall. "You treating her right?" "I am trying to." Diane studied him. "Trying is good. Keep trying." Angela smiled from the doorway, and Charles felt like he had passed some crucial test. But the strain of everything was showing. Angela was managing her mother's care, running her business, and trying to maintain their relationship. Charles watched her push herself harder than anyone should, sleeping too little and worrying too much. In late August, 2 months after her mother's stroke, Angela came to Charles's apartment late on a Friday night. She looked like she had not slept in days. Dark circles under her eyes. Tension in every line of her body. "I need to talk to you," she said. They sat at his small table. Charles made tea. Neither of them drank. "I have been thinking about the business," Angela said. "With everything happening with my mom, I cannot give it the attention it needs. We are starting to lose momentum. Clients are noticing that I am not as present. You are dealing with a family emergency. They understand. Some do. But we are in a competitive field. If we are not delivering at the highest level, people go elsewhere." "What are you saying?" "I am saying I need to make some changes. Scale back for a while. Focus on fewer clients. Maybe bring in a partner who can handle more of the day-to-day operations." "That makes sense." Angela took a breath. "I want that partner to be you. Full partnership. Equal stake in the firm. We rebuild it together, with you handling more of the client work while I manage strategy and business development." Charles felt his chest tighten. "That is a huge offer. You have earned it. The work you have done over the past 6 months has been exceptional. Clients ask for you specifically now. You have rebuilt your reputation. What about us? The personal relationship? We keep that separate. Professional at the office, personal outside of it. We are both adults. We can manage boundaries." It sounded perfect. It was everything Charles had been working toward. A real partnership with someone he respected. Financial stability. A path forward. "So why did it feel wrong? Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course. Take the time you need." After she left, Charles paced his apartment. Partnership meant commitment. It meant tying his future to Angela's firm, to Seattle, to a specific vision of what his life would look like. A few months ago, he would have jumped at the opportunity. Now, something held him back. He called his sister the next morning. Melissa listened to the whole situation, then asked the question he had been avoiding. "Do you want to be her business partner or do you want something else?" "I do not know." "Both, maybe?" "Those are not the same thing, Charles. Being business partners means professional obligations, contracts, legal entanglements. It changes the dynamic. What if it is the right move professionally? Is it? Or are you agreeing because you are afraid if you say no, you will lose her?" The question hit too close to home. Charles did not have an answer. He spent the weekend thinking. He looked at his life now, 5 months after walking into Angela's office for the first time. He had meaningful work. Financial stability. A relationship with someone he loved. Friends. Purpose. But he realized something else. He had been letting his life happen to him. Taking opportunities as they came. Reacting instead of choosing. Even his relationship with Angela had started because she had made the first move, asked him on the date, said "I love you" first. He had spent so long being grateful for what he had been given that he had forgotten to decide what he actually wanted. Monday morning, Charles went to Angela's office. She looked up from her computer, hope and apprehension mixed in her expression. "I am honored by the partnership offer," he said. "But I need to decline." Her face went carefully neutral. "Okay. Can I ask why?" "Because I think we need to keep the business and personal relationship separate. Not just in theory, but in practice. If I become your partner, every disagreement becomes complicated. Every business decision affects our personal life. I do not want that pressure on what we have." Angela nodded slowly. "I understand. But I do want to keep working with you. As a consultant, as a collaborator. Just not as a partner with legal ties and equity stakes. What do you want instead?" Charles sat down. I want to build my own consulting practice. Small, focused on work I care about. I want to collaborate with your firm when it makes sense. And I want our relationship to be about us, not about business strategy or client management." She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "That is probably smarter than my idea." "Really? Really? I was trying to solve too many problems at once. Keep you close professionally so I would not worry about losing you personally. But you are right. It would complicate everything. So we are okay?" "We are okay." Angela smiled, and it reached her eyes for the first time in weeks. "Actually, I think we are better than okay. You just set a boundary. A healthy one. I am learning from you." Over the next few weeks, Charles started laying groundwork for his own practice. He filed paperwork, created a simple website, reached out to former contacts who had offered him work. Angela helped when he asked, giving advice and making introductions, but she let him build it himself. By early September, he had his first client. A small tech startup that needed help scaling their infrastructure. The project was not glamorous, but it was his work he had chosen, on terms he set, building something that belonged to him. Angela's mother continued to improve. By mid-September, Diane was walking with assistance and speaking in full sentences. The doctors were pleased with her progress. Angela's exhaustion began to lift, replaced by something that looked like hope. One evening in late September, Charles and Angela sat on the waterfront where they had almost kissed months before. The weather was turning cooler, fall arriving in earnest. Angela wore a sweater and leaned against his shoulder. "I have been thinking about what you said," she told him. "About choosing what you want instead of just taking what is offered." "Yeah. I think I have been doing that too. Just accepting how things are instead of imagining how they could be." "What do you want to be different?" She turned to look at him. "I want us to move in together." Charles felt his heart skip. "That is a big step." "I know. But we are together most nights anyway. And I like who I am when you are around. I like the life we are building. I like it too. So what do you think?" "I think we should start looking for a place. Something that is ours, not yours or mine." Angela smiled and kissed him. Not the tentative kiss from months ago, but something sure and grounded. A kiss that tasted like commitment and future and the kind of happiness that came from choosing each other every day. They started apartment hunting the following weekend. They looked at places in different neighborhoods, trying to find the right balance of space and location and affordability. Charles was making decent money now, but not enough for anything extravagant. Angela's business was stable but not booming while she focused on her mother's recovery. They found a 2-bedroom apartment in Ballard, close to the water and full of natural light. Big enough for both of them to have workspace. A kitchen where they could cook together. A living room with space for the piano Charles had been saving up to replace. They signed the lease in early October. Move-in date was set for November 1st. Charles felt something he had not felt in years. Excitement about the future. Not because of career achievements or external validation, but because he was building a life with someone who saw him completely and loved him anyway. The night they signed the lease, they went to dinner at the Ethiopian restaurant where they had eaten early in their relationship. The same food, the same warmth, but everything different because of what they had been through together. "I love you," Charles said across the table. "I know I have said it before, but I want to say it again. I love you for seeing who I could be when I could not see it myself. For being patient while I figured things out. For choosing me." Angela reached across the table and took his hand. "I love you too. For your honesty and your growth and the way you show up even when it is hard." They sat there holding hands, planning a future that felt both exciting and secure. Charles thought about the man he had been 18 months ago, standing in an auction house watching his old life get sold off. He could not have imagined this. Could not have dreamed he would end up here, happy in ways that had nothing to do with money or status or other people's opinions. Sometimes losing everything was the only way to find what actually mattered. The server brought them dessert they had not ordered, compliments of the house. They ate it slowly, savoring the sweetness, in no hurry to be anywhere else. Outside, Seattle glowed in the October darkness. The city where Charles had built an empire and lost it. The city where he had learned to start over. The city where he had found Angela. It felt like home in a way it never had before. Not because of success or achievement, but because it was where he had learned to be himself. Flawed and human and trying. And that, it turned out, was enough. More than enough. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. October in Seattle brought crisp air and leaves turning gold along the streets. Charles woke up in Angela's apartment on a Saturday morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, and watched her sleep for a moment before getting up. They had 3 more weeks until the move to their new place in Ballard, and he found himself counting down the days. He made coffee and stood at the window, looking out at the city. His consulting practice was growing steadily. He had 3 ongoing clients and 2 more in the pipeline. Nothing massive, but sustainable. The kind of work that challenged him without consuming him. Angela emerged from the bedroom, hair wrapped in a silk scarf, wearing one of his old t-shirts. She wrapped her arms around him from behind and rested her cheek against his back. "Morning," she murmured. "Morning. Coffee is ready." They sat together on the couch, drinking coffee and talking about their plans for the day. Angela needed to visit her mother in Tacoma. Diane was doing well enough now that she would be discharged from the rehabilitation facility next week, moving into an assisted living apartment where she could continue outpatient therapy while maintaining independence. "Want company for the drive?" Charles asked. "I would love that." They drove south on I-5, traffic light for a weekend morning. Angela told him about a new client her firm had landed, a mid-sized healthcare company looking to restructure their operations. Charles told her about a meeting he had scheduled for Monday with a startup founder who had reached out after hearing about his work. The conversation was easy, the kind that came from knowing someone well enough that silence was comfortable too. At the rehabilitation facility, Diane was in the common room working on a puzzle. Her right hand still had limited mobility, but she was determined. She looked up when they entered and her face brightened. "There is my girl. And Charles. Good to see you both." They sat with her for an hour, talking about the assisted living apartment she would move into, the continued therapy schedule, the small routines she was building back into her life. Charles mostly listened, but Diane included him in the conversation naturally, asking his opinion on practical matters like furniture arrangement and technology setup. When they got up to leave, Diane took Angela's hand. "You picked a good one," she said, glancing at Charles. "He shows up. That matters more than people think." In the car on the way back to Seattle, Angela was quiet. Charles let her be, understanding that watching her mother rebuild her life brought up complicated emotions. "Finally," she said, "I keep thinking about how fast things can change. One day my mom was healthy and independent. The next day, everything was different. Yeah. It makes me want to hold on tighter to the good things. Not take them for granted." Charles reached over and took her hand. "I am not going anywhere. I know." She squeezed his fingers. "That is what makes it matter." The following week, they started moving boxes to the new apartment. Neither had accumulated much furniture, which made the process simpler. Charles brought his few belongings from the Fremont studio. Angela packed up her Wallingford apartment with efficient care, wrapping things in newspaper and labeling boxes. Melissa came to help, along with Angela's brother Marcus. The 4 of them carried boxes up 2 flights of stairs, arranged furniture, hung artwork. Charles watched Angela decide where things should go, creating a space that would belong to both of them. By Thursday evening, October 24th, the apartment was mostly functional. Bed assembled. Kitchen organized. Books on shelves. They ordered pizza and sat on the floor eating it because they had not bought a dining table yet. "This feels right," Angela said, looking around at the space they had created. "It does." Marcus left after dinner, citing an early shift the next morning. Melissa lingered, helping Angela hang curtains in the bedroom. Charles heard them talking and laughing, the easy conversation of women who had become friends independent of him. When Melissa finally left, she hugged Charles at the door. "You look happy. Really happy." "I am." "Good. You deserve it." "She does too." After she left, Charles and Angela collapsed on the couch, exhausted from the physical work of moving. Angela curled against his side, her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being willing to build this with me. I know it is not what you expected 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I did not expect anything good to happen. This is better than I could have imagined." She tilted her head up to look at him. "I love you. I love you too." They stayed like that until they fell asleep on the couch, too tired to move to the bedroom. The next morning, Charles woke up early. Angela was still asleep, breathing softly against his chest. He carefully extracted himself and went to the kitchen to make coffee. While the coffee brewed, he thought about the past 7 months. March to October. The span of time between walking into Angela's office as a man who had lost everything and standing in their shared apartment as someone who had found something better. He had been thinking about the future a lot lately. Not in the anxious way he used to, worrying about whether he was successful enough or impressive enough. Just practical thinking about what he wanted the next year, the next 5 years, the next chapter to look like. And every version of that future included Angela. Charles had bought a ring 3 weeks earlier. Nothing extravagant, but something beautiful. A simple band with a small diamond, elegant and understated. The kind of thing Angela would actually wear. He had been carrying it with him, waiting for the right moment. He realized the right moment was not going to announce itself. He had to choose it. Angela emerged from the bedroom, hair messy from sleep, wearing pajama pants and a tank top. She looked sleepy and beautiful and perfectly herself. "Morning," she said, heading for the coffee. "Morning." Charles poured her a cup. "Want to go somewhere today?" "Where?" "It is a surprise." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind of surprise?" "The good kind. Trust me. Always." They got dressed and Charles drove them north, out of the city toward the mountains. Angela watched the landscape change through the window, trees getting denser, the air getting clearer. "Are you going to tell me where we are going?" she asked. "You will see." He took them to a trail he had discovered years ago, back when he used to hike to clear his mind from work stress. It was a moderate climb, about 3 miles to a viewpoint that overlooked a valley with mountains in the distance. They hiked together, talking and not talking, comfortable in both. The October air was cool but the sun was warm. Leaves crunched under their feet. Other hikers passed them going the opposite direction, heading back down. When they reached the viewpoint, the vista opened up before them. Mountains layered in shades of blue and gray. The valley below dotted with trees showing fall colors. The sky impossibly wide and clear. "This is beautiful," Angela said, slightly breathless from the climb. Charles led her to a flat rock near the edge of the viewpoint. They sat together, looking out at the view. "I have been thinking about us," Charles said. "About everything that has happened since March. Good things, I hope. Very good things. You gave me a chance when I did not think I deserved one. You saw something in me I could not see in myself. You were patient while I figured out what I actually wanted. You did the same for me. Helped me remember that I did not have to carry everything alone." Charles reached into his jacket pocket. His heart was beating fast, but he felt calm. "Certain. Angela, I spent a long time measuring my life by the wrong things. Success and money and what other people thought of me. I lost all of that and thought I had lost everything. But I had not. I just had to learn what actually mattered." He pulled out the small box and opened it. The ring caught the sunlight. "What matters is this. You and me. Building something real together. Choosing each other every day. I do not need an empire or a corner office or any of the things I used to think defined me. I just need you." Angela's eyes went wide, filling with tears. "Will you marry me?" She looked at him, then at the ring, then back at him. "Yes. Yes, absolutely yes." Charles slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. She looked at it for a moment, then threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you," she said into his shoulder. "I love you so much. I love you too." They held each other on the mountaintop while the world spread out below them, vast and full of possibility. The hike down was slower, both of them stopping frequently to look at the ring, to kiss, to talk about what came next. Angela called her mother from the parking lot, putting the phone on speaker so Charles could hear too. "We are engaged," Angela said, unable to keep the joy out of her voice. Diane's response came through clear and strong, her speech almost back to normal. "It is about time. That man has been looking at you like you hung the moon since the first day I met him." They called Melissa next, then Marcus. By the time they got back to Seattle, both their phones were full of congratulatory messages from friends and family. That evening, they went to the Ethiopian restaurant, the place that had become theirs without them planning it. The owner saw Angela's ring and brought them champagne, refusing to let them pay for dinner. "When do you want to get married?" Angela asked, twirling pasta on her fork. "I do not need a long engagement. Whenever you want." She considered this. "Spring, maybe? April or May? Something small and meaningful. Just the people who matter." "That sounds perfect." They planned in broad strokes. A ceremony somewhere outdoors. Maybe on the waterfront or at a park. Close friends and family only. Nothing elaborate, just something true to who they were. Over the next few weeks, they settled into life in the new apartment. Charles's consulting practice continued to grow. Angela's firm landed 2 major clients, both referrals from satisfied customers. Diane moved into her assisted living apartment and thrived, regaining more independence each week. Charles and Angela hosted Thanksgiving at their place. Melissa came, along with Marcus and Diane, and Charles's parents drove up from Portland. They crowded around the small dining table they had finally bought, sharing food and stories and laughter. Charles looked around the table at the people he loved, at Angela beside him wearing the ring that meant forever, and felt a contentment so complete it almost hurt. His father caught his eye and nodded, a small gesture that communicated approval and understanding. His mother squeezed his hand when she thought no one was looking. They had never said "I told you so" about the empire that collapsed, and now they were just happy to see him happy. After everyone left, Charles and Angela cleaned up together, washing dishes and putting away leftovers in comfortable silence. "That was nice," Angela said, drying a plate. "It was. I like our people." "Me too." December came with rain and early darkness. They spent evenings on the couch, planning the wedding in small increments. Deciding on a date, May 10th of 2025. Choosing a location, Discovery Park overlooking Puget Sound. Creating a guest list that stayed under 40 people. Charles replaced his piano, a used upright that he found through a classified ad. It was not as nice as the grand piano he had owned before, but it had good tone and felt like a new beginning. He started playing again, muscle memory returning slowly, reminding him of the person he used to be before ambition had narrowed his world. Angela would sit and listen while he played, working on her laptop or just enjoying the music. Sometimes she would sing along, unself-conscious and slightly off-key, and Charles would think this was what happiness actually looked like. Not perfection. Just presence. On Christmas morning, they exchanged small gifts. Charles gave Angela a first edition of her favorite book, something he had tracked down through a rare book dealer. Angela gave Charles a framed photograph of the two of them at the mountaintop where he had proposed, taken by a hiker who had offered. They had been looking at each other, not the camera, caught in a moment of pure joy. "This is perfect," Charles said, studying the photograph. "I thought we could hang it in the living room. A reminder." Of what? Of how far we have come. Of choosing each other. They hung the photograph that afternoon, centering it on the wall where they would see it every day. Winter turned to spring. The wedding planning came together without stress or drama. They wrote their own vows. They hired a friend who was an amateur photographer. They ordered food from their favorite restaurants instead of hiring a caterer. Everything was simple and intentional and exactly what they wanted. May 10th arrived with perfect weather, sunny and 70 degrees. Discovery Park was green and lush, the sound visible through the trees. 40 people gathered in a clearing, sitting on simple wooden chairs. Charles stood at the front wearing a suit that fit him well, bought new for this occasion. His hands were steady. His heart was full. Then Angela appeared, walking down the short aisle with her mother on one side and her brother on the other. She wore a simple white dress, her hair natural and beautiful, carrying wildflowers instead of an elaborate bouquet. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The ceremony was short. They exchanged rings and vows. Charles promised to show up, to choose her, to build a life based on truth instead of image. Angela promised to see him, to trust him, to create something lasting together. When the officiant pronounced them married, Charles kissed his wife and heard their friends and family cheer. The reception was in a nearby community center, nothing fancy but full of warmth. They ate good food and danced to a playlist Angela had created. Charles's father gave a toast about second chances and finding what matters. Diane spoke about recognizing real love when you see it. Late in the evening, Charles and Angela stepped outside for air. The sun was setting over the sound, painting everything gold and pink. "We did it," Angela said, leaning against him. "We did. How do you feel?" "Happy. Really, truly happy." She turned to face him, her hands on his chest. "You know what I realized today?" "What?" "You came into my office 7 months ago with nothing. No money, no status, no certainty. Just yourself. And that was enough. That was always enough." Charles felt tears prick his eyes. "You gave me back my life." "No." She shook her head. "You rebuilt it. I just showed you the tools were still there." They stood together as the sun sank below the horizon, the sky turning from gold to purple to deep blue. Inside, someone called for them. "Time to cut the cake." They walked back in hand, ready to rejoin the celebration. But Charles paused at the door for one more look at the sunset, at the city lights starting to glow in the distance, at the world that had knocked him down and then given him everything that mattered. He had lost an empire. But he had gained a life. A real one, built on love and honesty and the courage to start over. And that, he thought as Angela tugged him inside, was the better deal by far. 6 months later, in November of 2025, Charles and Angela sat in their apartment working on their respective projects. His consulting practice had grown to the point where he was turning down clients. Her firm had expanded, bringing on 2 new consultants and moving to a larger office space. They had fallen into rhythms. Coffee together every morning. Walks through the neighborhood. Sunday dinners with family. The small rituals that made a marriage work. Angela looked up from her laptop. "I have news." "Good news or complicated news?" "Good news. Really good news." "Tell me." She smiled. "I am pregnant." Charles felt the world stop and restart. "You are serious?" "Completely serious. About 8 weeks." He crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby." They held each other, crying and laughing, already imagining the future that was unfolding. A child who would grow up knowing they were wanted. A family built on foundation that would hold. Outside, Seattle glowed in the November darkness. Inside, Charles and Angela planned and dreamed and loved each other fiercely. The empire had crumbled. But from the ruins, Charles had built something better. Something real. Something that would last. He had learned what so many people never figure out. That success is not measured in dollars or status or other people's opinions. It is measured in love and presence and the courage to keep showing up for the people who matter. Angela had shown him that. Had seen past the ruins to the man underneath. Had believed in him when he could not believe in himself. And now they were building together. Not an empire, but a life. Not something to impress the world, but something to sustain them through whatever came next. Charles looked at his wife, at the ring on her finger, at the joy in her eyes as she talked about nurseries and baby names and the future they were creating. This was enough. More than enough. This was everything. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next.